Ranjana Jamunatera Vanachari Jamunatera Vanachari Jaya Radha Mandava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavala Bhagirivardhari Gopi Janavala Bhagirivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatera Vanachari Yamunatera Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Jaya Panchatattva 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 Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Astota Satatsi Srimad, the Divine Grace is confirmed the church. Srila Abhachan Vin Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Astota Satatsi Srimad, the Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavena Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridasa Kaur Ki Jai. Prem Si Kahao Si Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Si Advaita Gadadhara Si Vasadi Si Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Si Radha Krishna Gopal Gopinath Syama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Suvindavan Dham Ki Jai. Si Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannathpuri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Munamaya Ki Jai. Srimati Tulsi Devi Bhakta Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Our glory is to the Sama devotees. Our glory is to the Sama devotees. Our glory is to the Sama devotees. Our glory is all glories to Sisi Gauranga Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You read that, okay? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasa Tato Jaya Mudiraya Nasta Prayesa Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavaiti Naistiki. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 16. We request Rasamai, can you recite the verse? We'll follow.
Labdhopasantirvirmate kiryata manasva buddhaya amlaya niyamya kshetragya etam niyate tam atmani atmanam atmani avruddhyo dhiro लब्धोपशान्तिर्विरमेत कीर्तयात्
Can someone try? Can someone try? Can someone recite? Mataji's? So what were translation, then translation and purport by His Divine Grace is Confound Acharya, Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. I have a request. Those who are hiding by behind the pillars, I thought we are a family. So in a family meeting, that's the time we have some some bonding by, physical contacts, physical eye contacts. So, mana, the mind, swabuddhya, by his own intelligence, amalaya, unalloyed, niyamya, by regulating, kshetragya, unto the living entity, etam, all of them, ninayat, merge, tam, that, atmani, the self, atmanam, the self, atmani, in the super self, avarudhya, being locked up, diraha, the fully satisfied, labda upasanti, one who has attained full bliss. Viramita, ceases from. Krityat, all other activities. Translation. Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, and emerge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, so that he ceases from all other activities. Please kindly responsibly repeat. Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, and then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, so that he ceases from all other activities. Purport. The functions of the mind are thinking, feeling, and willing. When the mind is materialistic or absorbed in material contact, it acts for material advancement of knowledge, destructively ending in discovery of nuclear weapons. But when the mind acts under spiritual urge, it acts wonderfully for going back home, back to Godhead, for life in complete bliss and eternity. Therefore, the mind has to be manipulated by good and unalloyed intelligence. Perfect intelligence is to render service unto the Lord. One should be intelligent enough to understand that the living being is, in all circumstances, a servant of the circumstances. I take that again. One should be intelligent enough to understand that the living being is, in all circumstances, a servant of all circumstances. Every living being is serving the dictates of desire, anger, lust, illusion, insanity, and enviousness, all materially affected. But even while executing such dictations of different temperaments, he is perpetually unhappy. When one actually feels this and turns his intelligence to inquiring about it from the right sources, he gets information of the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Instead of serving materially for the above-mentioned different humors of the body, the living entity's intelligence then becomes freed from the unhappy illusion of materialistic temperament, and thus, by unalloyed intelligence, the mind is brought into the service of the Lord. The Lord and his service are identical, being on the absolute plane. Therefore, the unalloyed intelligence and the mind are merged into the Lord, and thus the living entity does not remain a seer himself, but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. When the living entity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act according to his desire. And when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for his illusory satisfaction. In his pure unalloyed state, the living being attains the stage of full bliss, labdo passanti, and ceases all material hankerings. Come again to Mirandasya, Ganajana Savakaya, Saksuru Militam, Jaina Tasmai, Se Gurve Namaha. Sajetayamanam Vistam, Stafitam, Yena Bhutali, Swayam Rupam Kadamayam, Dadati Swa Padantikam. Vanchakalpataribhyacha, Kripasanabhyayevacha, Chitanam Pavanabhyo, Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadara, Sivasadi, Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pestaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Swami Itinam. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine, Anirvises Sonyavadi. So we'd like to welcome everyone to this morning class. And the points raised here in this text and the purport, they're relevant to our everyday development in our devotional service and even in our social, cultural developments. The points raised are very important. Why? Because this is touching on the mind. And the whole of this body is like the framework of the mind. The mind enables us to acquire different types of bodies based on our thinking, feeling, and willing. And so, Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains that the mind could be the source of our degradation. The mind could also become a source for elevation. And for those of us, like me, who is conditioned, the mind basically is a source of degradation. And therefore, it is important for us to become aware of this very salient point. And the mind has no enemy. He has no friend too. And so, if we make the mind our friend in our conditioned state, we're really looking for trouble. Because in our conditioned state, the mind is always dictating to us things that are adverse to our spiritual development. In fact, the whole of the suffering of humanity could be attributed to the negative impact of the mind. Unfortunately, I can speak for myself. When I was a kid, there was this celebrity who had debuted an album. And it was like, the lyrics basically were so inspirational for those of us who were kids. And what was he talking about? He was mentioning that, in his lyrics, he mentioned that we should follow our minds. And when we hear this music, the lyrics, hey, if even you're eating, it's like the gopis. If even you're eating, you jump out to the music scenario because it's giving you some good advice. Follow your mind. And the album was debuted, Follow My Mind. You could Google that on the internet, like Jimmy Cliff. Follow my mind. If I follow my mind, I will always be right. So we thought, wow, this is Parker philosophy. So when you read Bhagavad Gita, it's completely the opposite. He was presenting an Ampa Sampradaya philosophy. A philosophy that will enable us to become more and more entangled in the material world. The very concept that the mind is the source of our problems in this world cannot be disputed. The mind may accept one thing now, and the very next moment, the mind rejects that same thing. Technically, it's called Sankalpa and Vikalpa. Accepting one thing now, I like this devotional service like anything. I want to be fully involved in this devotional service. And then the next moment, the mind tells you, why are you wasting your time in this devotional service? You have better things to do out there. There's so many rules in this devotional service. Why are you wasting your time there? In fact, we have some situations where people become devotees and then they live to become Muslims or they live to become Christians. And one of the reasons is that, we are very structured in terms of following a standard. Now, if someone is not ready to follow any standard, the mind could manipulate the person. But here we find in the purport is mentioned that we have to manipulate the mind to suit the purposes of Krishna consciousness. So the mind, okay, for instance, it's 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, anybody who wants to come to Mangalati should be up and in the bathroom. But then, at 4 o'clock, the mind tells you, you really need more sleep. Your body is still very weak, So in this way, we've been manipulated by the mind. And this has been going on since time immemorial. So the strategies to be able to overcome the mind, Papa gives here, is to use the intelligence. The intelligence is supposed to be higher than the mind. But, it's like you have 2 kids in the home. One is older, meek and humble. The other one is younger, but very tough. It's like, a brat. So he comes to bully even the older one. That's the nature of the mind. The intelligence is supposed to control the mind. We're supposed to use our intelligence to be able to, manipulate the mind. But then, the mind is so audacious that sometimes it bullies the intelligence. What are you doing? What do you mean? Come and sit down there. And in most cases, the intelligence is subdued. And then we act even against our own better judgment. Now, out there, we're not taught. See, I studied management up to PhD level, but we're never taught how to control yourself. No. Nobody teaches you that in the colleges or in the universities. Rather, the advocacy is that, do as much as possible in terms of utilizing your senses to explore and exploit the resources of nature. That is also what Krishna mentions in the Gita, that since time immemorial, we have been exploiting the resources of material nature. And this exploitation creates an entanglement. And so devotional service creates an opportunity for us to be able to use our senses to serve the master of the senses, Rishikesh. Instead of using the senses to serve some material master and become more and more entangled, we could use our senses and the mind to serve the Supreme Personality of God in devotional service. So what a wonderful opportunity to become purified and have an exit from material incarcerations of this world that Prabhupada has provided for us. So I never had any idea, because I was indoctrinated by some celebrity when I was a kid with their own philosophy that we have to follow our mind, until I read the Bhagavad Gita. So majority of people out there, they don't even know how the mind functions. They don't even understand their pristine identity, their original identity. Otherwise, people will not be acting based on instinct. And therefore, it is important to understand how to be able to adjust our lives in such a way that we create a framework where we have time to be able to study proper books. Because if we study the books and we become aware of this information, this spiritual knowledge, the next step will be how to implement the instructions in our own personal lives to get the appropriate realizations. But if you just come to class and that is the end of it, it is very difficult. In fact, majority of the problems that we have in our own society, even with the abuse cases and all this stuff, statutory rapes and all this stuff, is due to the manipulations of the mind on the conditioned soul. Statutory rape means you have sex with someone who is under 18. They may even consent to it. I don't know the law in India, but this is the American law. People know it is not good to do it, but they do it anyway. The mind. Sankalpa, Vikalpa. And so, we have to guide our thoughts, we have to guide our actions by proper association. And you see, it doesn't matter whether you are a general. Even in a battlefield, generals fall. They die. Look at the war in Ukraine. A number of generals have died. Generals die, so it means war is real. So when we have casualties due to the inability to control the mind, the inability to tame the mind, it means that Krishna consciousness philosophy is factual, it's real. Because the mind has no respect for anybody. The senses, the untamed senses, they don't pay obeisance to anybody. They don't come and touch your feet. Oh, please, engage me in the service. No. So, this devotional service, it appears very simple, but we can make it very complicated. We want to make it complicated by creating our own structure, our own agenda. And based on our motivation for coming to devotional service, Krishna may fulfill our desire. But then, we have to be sure that our desire is genuine. Because temptations will come. And it is up to us to succumb to the temptations or to not resonate with the temptations. Even Krishna, women tempt him. Tinawakra in the 10th canto, when Krishna, Balaram, and the Gopas, they entered Mathura, and then when he met this hunchbacked woman, he set him up. He fixed him up. She became superlatively very beautiful. But then the woman said, let's go to my house. You're so beautiful. You're so handsome. Oh, handsome one. Let's go to my house. But Krishna resisted tactfully. Tactfully, he resisted. He didn't get angry and say, oh, you rascal, I just gave you a boon, I'm straightening you up, and you want to fuck me now? No, he was not angry. He presented a very nice philosophy. See, when people are on the road. When the people see me going to your house with you on the road, people will think otherwise. It's not proper, lady. So, there are good examples for us to take cue from our own scriptures. It's not that we go about complaining. Oh, people are just tempting me here and there. Who is not being tempted? Everyone is being tempted. And temptations is like exams. If you don't get to, sit in exams, how will you be evaluated by your professors? How will Krishna evaluate us if we don't get temptations? How will Radharani evaluate us if we don't get temptations? Everyone can just assume, oh, I love Krishna so much. But when the temptation comes, then it puts us in the right place that evaluation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead will help us to think better. So, here in this very text, strategies on how to manipulate the mind are given, and it's all based on devotional culture. Intelligence alone cannot really function to be able to subdue the mind. We need association. We need the mercy of the devotees. Now, there is the tendency, as soon as I get a position, I'd start being abusive. A position or power is like a, what do you call it? Like a wine. It changes behavior. Someone may be very, very nice guy, very easygoing, very friendly. As soon as they get a position, their modus operandi, their modus vivendi changes. Power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. And these are all basically due to the influence of the mind. Because the people, even kleptocrats, people who steal money from their countries, they know this is not good. But they are influenced by the mind. So, the mind we have to really watch out for because our devotional life, our development, or our future devotional career is based on how we are able to manipulate the mind to suit the purposes of Krishna consciousness instead of allowing the mind to manipulate us. It's so easy for us to be manipulated by the mind. And that is one of the major causes of the imbalance in human society. Even a parent can abuse their child, sexually abuse their child, because of the manipulations of the mind. So it's so dangerous. And therefore, if we understand the danger inherent in not being able to control the mind, and we follow the instructions of the scriptures, of always engaging the mind in Krishna consciousness. Krishna mentions in the Gita, mana, bhava mahabat. So something difficult could be there, but there is a solution to it. So Krishna gave the solution. We should engage our mind in thinking of Krishna. And then one may raise the objection that it's so difficult to think about Krishna all the time. So engage in reading, engage in services, and if even you are not doing anything at the moment, you may be thinking about Krishna's pastimes. If you are vigorously engaged in reading, one of the problems is that we don't read. We're too busy to read. And therefore, you see, we can't blame Krishna. It's very easy to say, but why did Krishna allow this to happen to me? I've seen people who tell me this. Why did Krishna allow this to happen to me? So my response usually is, well, Krishna, you have independence. And it is up to you to see how you utilize your independence properly, appropriately. And so the independence given to us is out of love. You see, when we love our children, when they come of a particular age, we give them an opportunity to be able to explore the world, to go out, get their own house, build their own house, have their own family. We don't keep our children in our home for the rest of their lives. They're not prisoners. That is out of love. So we also have independence, and that is due to Krishna's love for his creatures. So we can use that independence wisely in devotional service. And the basic foundation is that we should use our mind and our senses to serve the master of the senses. And when we're doing this without any laxity in our lives, it is very difficult for Maya to crack in. Maya is always knocking on our door. Hello, hello, hello. Can you open the door? I have a message for you. And when you open the door, Maya puts one of her feet inside, one of her legs inside. And then before you know, she's inside the house. So don't open the door. Don't open the door. The other point is that we may blame the mind, and we may say, well, it's my mind that let me into all this trouble. Either we blame Krishna or we blame the mind. But we have no one to blame. We can't blame Krishna, we can't blame the mind. If you're on the battlefield and then there's a casualty, you don't blame the enemy. You blame yourself for not being careful. We are on the battlefield, and therefore we have to have that type of sensitivity and think of psychological space. Psychological space means this person right before me could be the cause of my degradation. It's like if you go into the forest to cut some sticks or to cut some bamboo, and it's infested with snakes, you wear boots. You don't go to that type of forest with slippers because you'll be bitten by a snake, very likely. And so we have to protect our lives, we have to protect our spiritual life by genuine and constant devotional association. Reading the books, chanting. It's not that I chant 16 rounds, then I put my beads down. Oh, take a break. Relationship with today is finished. 16 rounds is the minimum. And so there are several ways we can keep ourselves engaged and not be affected by the waves of the negative influence of the mind and the senses. And so it is important for us to become good examples, and we should not become overly jittery by a general having to fall on a battlefield, because that shows that the philosophy is real. I remember the case of Subari Muni. So Garuda used to go to a particular lake to pick some fish for his lunch, either breakfast or lunch, I don't know, but he used to go to a particular lake. Is it breakfast or lunch? So Subari also was doing some meditation in the bed of the sea, and he was also very philanthropic. He wanted to protect the fishes. You are in your kingdom, and so that was okay. So, but Subari became offensive to Garuda. We read this story, but there is so much implication to this story. Subari was very advanced in yogic powers. But he caused an offense to Garuda. He cursed Garuda. No, see, Krishna consciousness, the only solace I have in Krishna consciousness is you can crack my head, you can knock me here, the solace I have is Krishna will take care. So we should be careful
not to use our positions to manipulate people. We should be careful not to use our positions to be offensive to people. And if even we don't have any position, we should be careful not to use our status to be offensive to anybody. Because there is a check and balance in devotional service. We pay for whatever price. We pay a good price for whatever deeds we perform. Even to be offensive to your child could be dangerous to your devotional service. Maybe to be offensive to your wife may not be dangerous, but it is dangerous. If you beat up your wife, it's called Vaishnavi Aparad. These things, they create setbacks. Abuses, they create setbacks in our devotional service. So we should be careful. We should be protectors of women, protectors of children, protectors of the elderly, not abusing them. If we believe that Krishna is the source of all creation and Krishna is our Father, if we believe in the general concept of Krishna consciousness being a global family, or even the whole world being a global family, because that's what Krishna mentions in the Gita, that everyone is his part and parcels. Mama evam so jiva loke. So if I see this little child, and because it's not my biological child, and I treat him badly, I'll get some terrible reactions. It doesn't matter my status. We should be more careful in our devotional dealings. Any comments or questions? Yes.
It's said that the mind is a dead matter. Like it doesn't on its own, it has no ability to think or do anything.
What?
So, mind is a dead matter. Mind is a matter. It doesn't on its own. It cannot do anything. And when the soul is the one which uses the mind to think, but we get two kinds of thought in the same thing. Like we get a good thought, like from the soul, and from the mind we get a bad thought. That's my understanding. But how is it like? Is it monoact? Like is the soul is doing both the things? Like is it this side it's doing a good thing and it's going the other side and it's telling a bad thing? How does it work, Maharaj?
You see, the mind, intelligence, and the ego, they constitute the subtle body, which is the carrier of the soul. And then this physical tabernacle, the physical body, is just a covering of the subtle body, which basically is also covering the soul. So, the mind is a facilitator of change, but basically a negative change. The intelligence is meant for discrimination. So whichever way you want to analyze it, the idea is that the intelligence is meant for discrimination, intelligent discrimination between good and bad, and to give the living entity or the embodied soul a chance to be able to do what is right. The mind simply dictates to us what is suitable for our degradation. So it doesn't matter how you analyze it. The basic functions of the mind Papa mentions in the purport: thinking, feeling, and willing. Now, there's nothing wrong with thinking, feeling, and willing, okay? But if it is directed in a negative way, it could be very entangling, it could be very dangerous. The soul basically is the vehicle in this body. Is the vehicle, is a passenger in this body. So how we use our bodies is up to us. And we will create the next body based on how we use our bodies now. And we will just, again, allow the soul to take up another body. But then we prolong the journey of the soul in the material world. No matter how hard we try, we cannot really do anything to be able to extricate ourselves from the shackles of material bondage, from the shackles of material incoherences, by our own power. And therefore, it is mentioned that we should work under the supervision of a spiritual master. And that could be very difficult, because sometimes the spiritual master could give you an instruction that is like a hard knock. I remember my spiritual master gave me an instruction some years ago, and some of his own disciples told me not to do it. Yeah, because it was life risky in terms of life. So they told me, don't do it, except you want to die. I said, oh, this is a good way to die. So, to be in devotional service may look very, very juicy, but it's not so juicy. If you really want to go back to Godhead, if you really surrender, it's not juicy. Because some of the things that you are asked to do, even your own friends will tell you not to do it. Because it could be very difficult. But then, are we ready to do the difficult, to take up the challenge, to take up the cross on behalf of the spiritual master, on behalf of Prabhupada? That is the question. So yes, I remember when I joined, I used to ask so many questions. And, my Guru Maharaj, at that time, he would just look at me and say, Vasudev, just chant Hare Krishna. You ask so many questions, just chant Hare Krishna and do some service. All these things will be revealed to you. So, yeah, the mind is very entangling. And that's why we are here. We are here to be able to disentangle ourselves from the entangling nature of the mind through devotional service. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? What's the time there? 5 minutes. Oh, 5 more minutes. Okay. Yes, you can ask.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dhanavad Pranam Maharaj. Maharaj, about the mind, that is about in the Parpat, I am seeing that the translation of 13 sloka, it is mentioned that more the mind becomes fixed upon different parts of the limbs of the Lord, one after another, the more the intelligence becomes purified. And in this purport also, I have seen that therefore mind has to be manipulated by good and unalloyed intelligence. Perfect intelligence is to render service unto the Lord.
Sure.
So the stresses has been given the intelligence, unalloyed, pure intelligence. Because we know from Bhagavad Gita that above the mind there is the intelligence.
Sure.
So my question is that here also it is written that perfect intelligence is to render service unto the Lord. So do you please explain more about pure intelligence, what it is about?
Pure intelligence basically implies that the intelligence is being directed to spiritual goals. In fact, like you mentioned, if all of our contemplations are on the limbs of the Lord, the intelligence becomes purified. And at some point in time, when we continue in this way, the intelligence becomes completely purified. And so the dictates, the different evaluations of the intelligence on subject matters could be very much helpful in manipulating the mind. So the purification of the intelligence is basically focused in devotional service. And when the intelligence becomes completely pure, then we don't have these problems of the mind overwhelming the intelligence. Because the mind might be so powerful, but with pure intelligence, it is very difficult for the mind to overwhelm the intelligence. The mind overwhelms our intelligence and makes us to act against even our better judgment because our intelligence is not pure enough. So devotional service facilitates the purification of the intelligence. And therefore, when we engage in devotional service, that's why you see the same mantra that everyone is chanting. Some people are better off in the purification of the intelligence than others. So there are conditions, there are strategies that we have to apply in the process of devotional service, in the process of our meditation on the Lord, and all the rest of that. I mean, it's like we don't encourage people to eat burger outside. Why? It's vegetarian stuff. Can someone explain why? It's vegetarian stuff. It's not meat, it's not fish, vegetarian stuff. But Prabhupada told us not to eat burger. Why? They constitute that impurity of the intelligence or purity of the intelligence. Why? Now, when someone is cooking, especially grains, the mentality of the person goes into the grains. The person who eats those grains, they imbibe the culture or the consciousness of that person. That is why we are not encouraged, or we don't have the proposition from Prabhupada to eat burger. It might be, it might be vegetarian food, but the person who cooks it, it matters. That's why we ask Brahmins to cook for the deities. The thinking, feeling, and willing. It comes to play. And so, when we eat only prasadam, it helps to purify the intelligence. When we eat burger, it helps to contaminate the intelligence. Even the biscuits we eat outside. I remember I was mentioning these things in one temple when I was traveling some time back. And then, one boy, he went to meet the mother after the class, like this, up to his age. He went to meet the mother after the class. And he said, "Mom, don't buy me biscuits again." Yeah, so little things, they matter. They add up and accumulate. And in due course of time, we have problem in dealing with situations. Exactly. That's why Prabhupada set up the system like that. So during the morning japa, instead of using the morning for japa, you're going to wash your clothes. Good for you. Prabhupada knows why he set up the system in this way, for our own benefit, for our own purification. If we just follow the structured system laid down by Prabhupada, we will become purified. Some of the things looks very simple. Some of the things in devotional service, they seem very simple. What is the use of this? But we should follow it. We should follow it. We should follow it because it helps in our purification. What's the time there? Huh? No, I'm asking about the time there. So, I got some honest advice in giving class here. People who are in charge of this place, they said, when it's 9 o'clock, you stop your class. All right. Thank you very much.